Then there are two lads who will have their own rooting section in this tourney. They're the hometown boys, Jerry Kesselring and Moe Norman. Both are from the Twin Cities and know this course by heart. Moe, who has been compared with the great Walter Hagen for color, fired a practice round 68. Canadian amateur champion for the last 2 years, Moe turned pro last spring. No one knows how good he may become.
Lucky enough to grow up at Rockaway. I've known Moe for, well, I knew him for 63 years. I grew up working at Rockaway Golf Club when Moe started. I was 12, Moe was 20, and I worked in the pro shop there for quite a few years and then decided that I wanted to be a golf pro, so I went into the Toronto area and became an assistant. And then I was fortunate enough to get my own job in the Toronto area, and then ended up back at Westmount as the head pro for 25 years. And so I've had a rapport with Moe for many, many years.
Well, I met Moe on the Ontario Amateur Circuit many years ago when we were both amateurs and kids. And we struck up quite a friendship. We traveled together a couple of winters to the Masters and down south, and we've just been friends all our lives. So.
First of all, let me say this is a nice tribute to Moe. I think it's great that you've done this. And my relationship with Moe goes over 55 years. I was 13 years older than him. But we got along terrific. We played an awful lot of golf together. And it's really hurts that he's not here now.
It's, first of all, it's an honor to be here today. I wish I would have got the chance to know Moe better than I did. I got certainly as well as the distinguished guests here today. I did get to spend time with Moe later in his career through his visits to the Titleist office. Also, over 20 years ago, I met and fell in love with and married Moe's niece. At that time, I didn't know, and when I did find out that my mother-in-law was Moe's twin, I thought that was quite intriguing and quite special, being a golf person my whole life. So I did hear family stories of Moe long before I ever got to meet the man. Kicking off a favorite story of Moe, that's difficult because there's so many, but I'm going to jump in and tell a little story about when Moe met technology, and really the realization to me after this story that Moe knew what technology was long before any of us did. It was the summer of 2001, and Moe would frequently visit the Titleist office up in Canada, and we would talk about several things. I had mentioned to Moe that the Titleist launch monitor, which is a computerized piece of equipment that measures a golfer's spin rate, launch angle, and ball speed to optimize their driver shot, that this piece of equipment was going to be at the National Golf Club the next day. And I told Moe that he's certainly welcome to stop by if he wanted to, and he did. Karen Gray, who was the leader of that project at the time, I had to work that day. I didn't get to go to the National. I will never forget her coming back to the office. Her face was ghostly white. I said, "Karen, what's the matter?" I thought something was wrong. She said, "Paul, I just met Moe Norman." I said, "Oh, well, did everything go well?" and it did. Karen Gray at that time has fit thousands of golfers on this piece of equipment. And when Mr. Norman got up to hit balls in front of this piece of equipment, it took him a very short time to figure out what the machine was telling him. And he asked Karen, he said, "Do you want to see we all know Moe could hit it left to right, right to left. We all know that story. But Mr. Norman said, "Would you like to see a straight one?" And Karen said, "Sure, Mr. Norman." this machine also measures side spin. And for the first time in the thousands of shots that Karen Gray had seen, after he called he was going to hit a straight one, he hit a shot with 0 side spin. And Karen looked at the machine and he said, "Would you like me to do that again?" And she said, "Sure." And he hit another one, and Karen couldn't believe her eyes. He hit several shots with dead straight. We talk about Moe being dead straight, but when Moe met the machine that told him he hit it dead straight, it was quite a fascinating story, and it was amazing for the people in that area to see him do that. So I think it's just a powerful statement of how talented he was, and in thinking back on it, I think that Moe knew what optimization of a golf shot was long before any computer could tell us so.
Thank you, Paul.
Occasionally I get asked by different people, how close were you to Moe? And I'd say, I'll tell you what, if we were gay, we'd have been married. I thought you'd like that one. I don't know how much closer you can get, but I always recall Moe used to caddy for me when he was first starting out at Rockaway, and they had a tournament there called the Rockaway Invitational, which I competed in every year because all the best players, amateurs, were playing in it. So it was a good one to win. I always remember coming to the 16th hole, I'll never forget this. And there's a little bit of a side wind. It's a par 3. And I says, "Moe," about 145 yards or something like that. I says, "Moe, give me my 8-iron. He says, "No." He says, "That's not the club." Now I know that at that point that I'm kind of even with the field. So he says, "It's a 7. I says, I says, "If you take the 8, he says, "you'll carry my bag in from here." And he was serious. I took the 7-iron, hit it 3 feet from the hole, won the tournament. I always remember that. But he's so highly respected by all the tour players and everything, and I always enjoy hearing about when they're asked, Trevino and the guys, what is it about, who are the best strikers of the ball that you've ever heard or seen? And they always say, Ben Hogan, Moe Norman. And they still say that today, as far as the ball striker is concerned. And the only other thing that I enjoyed watching, whenever the Open was here or at any of the courses nearby, Moe would always arrive at the practice area Wednesdays before the tournament started. And Tom Kite or some of the real well-known players would spot him, and they said, "Moe, VJ, the last time it was held here," he'd call him out, and he said, "Moe, come on out here and hit some balls for us guys." So he'd go out, and first thing he'd say to him, "I don't know how you guys can play with these toothpicks," because all Moe's irons were very heavy. E3, nobody plays E3. I couldn't get the thing back to the ball. But anyway, it just took them 2 or 3 shots with their clubs to show them what he was, kind of demonstrate how good he was. And the thing that I appreciated when I watched a lot of the other pros that heard about Moe would stop practicing, and they'd come around and gather behind him, and the gallery that was there, I always move in on him. So he was really respected as a great, great player.
There's so many, just so many, going back so many years, but some of the things that stick in my mind vividly. In the 50s, there was a great amateur tournament at the Brantford Golf Club called the Calvert Invitation. It was a 2-dayer, okay? And the day before the first round, I'm playing a practice round with Don Very and a fellow called Ted Holmes, 2 good players. At the old Brantford Golf Club, the first hole was a short par 4 up top, and then you had a par 3 going down into the valley, then the par 5. It's changed since then. And I'm playing with these 2 guys, and Moe's directly behind me, okay? So we finish the first hole, I walk off, and as I'm walking off the back of the green, I hear ding, and I turn around, and I see this ball has hit the flag and stopped about 3 feet away, okay? I look back, and Moe's sticking his wedge back in his bag. Now we go to the second hole, okay? And par 3, it's about a 6-iron shot. We play the hole. I'm walking off the back of the green with Don, and I hear ding. I turn around, and I see Moe, and I went like this. I remember going like this. I went like that, and he goes. Anyway, we get in, and I said, hit it pretty good. He said, hit 2 more flags, hit 2 more flags, okay? Now, I got paired with him. Ernie Bentley, myself, Jesus, I think you were in that group that day.
Could be.
Yeah.
I never missed any of those
Anyway,
events.
we're a foursome, and we all played extremely well. I ended up with a great golf course. We were somewhere between 69 and 71. Ernie Bentley was small, but a pretty good player. Moe shot 64. The tournament was effectively over, but he dissected the golf course that first round with a 64. Could have been 54, okay? He was probably at the height of his ball striking ability at that point in time. It was just amazing. But that's one of the thousands of things I remember about Moe.
Well, you know, I think everybody in the golfing fraternity, whether being an amateur or a golf pro, has an Moe Norman story. But there are just so many. But I remember when we were young, and Gary Cowan and I had finished a couple of years of high school, and then we went to business college together. We decided we were going to go to Florida. And Moe knew we were going, so Moe said, well, I'm going to go with you, but I'll go my own way. So Moe always took the old same route, and he did this until just a couple of years ago when he couldn't go to Florida anymore. And it was kind of Highway 1 through Pinehurst, and he would call on the same people that he knew, the same hotels he would stay in if they were still up, you know, all those years. Some of them were torn down. He'd visit the same golf pros, and he had a lot of friends on the way down. Anyways, Gary and I got there, and Moe showed up the next day, and we're staying at the Riviera Country Club in Daytona Beach. It was owned by the Meyer boys, and really nice guys, and we lived upstairs in the clubhouse. And Moe got there the next day, and it was late in the day, and Moe said, come on, pal, we're going to go play a few holes. And if Moe liked you, he called you pal. So I said, Moe, it's going to be dark. It'll be dark in a half hour. We can't play. He says, come on, you got to come and play with me. So we teed off. We played 2 holes. We hit our tee shot on the next hole. Next thing I see, Moe's heading towards the bush. And and I see him take a brown bag out of his ball pocket. And he's in the bush, and he's ratting around like a moose. And I'm wondering, what in the world is going on? Finally, he comes out. I said, Moe, what are you doing? He said, I dug a little hole. And he says, that's my bank. And he put the brown bag in the hole. That was his money. So at nighttime, I would watch him, and we would be playing, and every once in a while I'd see Moe go out about 5 o'clock. It got dark fairly early in Florida. Marlene, you spent many years at college there in Orlando. I would see Moe go out by himself, and I knew he was going out to get $100 out of his bank. And probably another story that I'll never forget is when I was the pro at Westmount, and Moe would come in every day. Sometimes he lived in the Toronto area for quite a few years, and then he lived with a Membry family up in Guildford who were very, very kind to him for many years. But he did move back to Kitchener-Waterloo in the 80s, the mid-80s, and of course he would be at Westmount every day, and I would try and encourage him not to come until the evening, because he would drive in the parking lot, and I used to have to watch him like a hawk, because if we had about 4 holes around the clubhouse that you could just tee off, like the first hole, the 10th hole, number 16, and number 3. And if there would be nobody around, Moe would all of a sudden just take his clubs out of his car and he'd tee off. Well, this one Tuesday, it's Ladies' Day at Westmount, and you never go near Westmount if you're a man on Ladies' Day. So I see Moe drive in the morning, and I see him drive out. I thought, oh, good, he's gone for the day. I'll see him tonight. I thought he was going up to see his friend Herb Rudney, who was a golf pro in Elmira. So I went over, I had a meeting with the manager, and we were kind of setting things up for the next month. And it was a long meeting. This was 9 o'clock in the morning. I come back out, and there was a gentleman who wanted to see me on the patio. And the patio at Westmount is right by the 18th green. So I walk through the clubhouse onto the patio, and I see Moe coming up 18. And this is Ladies' Day. And I see 3 balls on the green, and they're all within 10 feet of the hole. So I walk out, I say, Moe, what are you doing? Oh, ladies in front of me, ladies behind me, never bothered anybody. Now I'm waiting. I'm not going to run and hide. I'm waiting all day for a lady to come up and say something. And I don't think Daintree Snyder was the captain that year, but I think Ruth Schlichter was the captain. And nobody said a word. And they never said a word to me. And I couldn't understand why, because if it would have been any other man, they'd have been all over him. They'd have probably had him kicked out for a month. So finally, I told the story. I had to make a speech at some kind of a function, and I told the story. Well, everybody just howled laughing. It could only happen to Moe, but there are just so many wonderful stories about Moe, and I'm sure we'll hear some more very shortly. Well, I was, that was in 56 or 55, I can't remember. I was, in the pro shop, and I know that the call had come. Moe, I think, got measured for a jacket to go to Mexico. He was on the Canadian team. And I know he went and he had his shots because he had to, I think he had to go twice to the doctor to have your shots to go to another country. And I think the call come that, they wanted to take him off the team for some reason or other. I don't know, Nick, if they forced him to turn pro at that time or what the deal was. But I can remember he hid in the rubber hall for everybody was looking for him. The press, they were coming into Rockaway and everybody was looking for him. And, I really don't know. I think, at that time, I don't know if it was the players on the team that got him kicked off. The RCJ has changed so much. It's a, now the RCJ is a great foundation and does so much good work. But I think in those days it was run, there was a close-knit bunch of guys. There was an old boys club. And for some reason or other, Moe just didn't fit in. And, if you knew how Moe acted and some of the things he did, and it was all innocent because he just didn't, at that time, he didn't relate to a lot of things. And he just didn't fit into that group. And I know he was, it really bothered him for many, many years that, he was looking forward to wearing the jacket that they had measured up for and so on, and never made the trip. Were you on that team, Nick, at that time? Yeah. Well, you can maybe elaborate a little more.
Yeah. I can remember that all the reporters and the cameramen were on the front lawn of his home. This is what he tells me. And his mother said, "What are all those fellows doing out there?" He said, "I don't know." So he goes out, and they had got word that Moe was going to be off the team. And so that was one of the tragic things about what happened to Moe. But he had to hand in his jacket, similar to this, with all the clothes that they gave him, the shoes and the golf bag and everything had to be surrendered. And that really bothered him a lot. The thing that always impresses me, though, here's a guy that was so good that he had 369s in his career, which is amazing. Another thing that always impressed me, I played with him for 55 years. I said, "Moe, about 10 years ago, that I've never seen you take a practice swing?" And he never took a practice swing. And I said, "Why?" He says, "Loss of energy." And that was his answer. Always the same, loss of energy.
Nick, I don't mean to correct you. I think you meant 59s, did you not? Yeah.
59, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, 59.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's so many things that you could recall about Moe that you could talk for an hour about all the different things that he was so...
It really is endless, isn't it?
Yeah, it is endless. When you've known him as long as I have, we played right up until he passed away 3 times that week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, he gets an appointment with his doctor, and his doctor tells him, "Moe, you need a new heart, and you're too old." That's what Moe told me. And so that's pretty well what I know about his history. But when he told me that he never took a practice swing, and he says, "I play faster with 2 balls than anybody in golf," and he did. He'd never have to, Moe would never hold anybody up. Anyway, that's all for now. I can't think of.
What's the lowest score he ever shot playing with you?
61.
61.
Yeah, 61. He loved playing Brantford Golf Club because it's a nice, challenging golf course. But we never ever played from all the way back. It was always the white markers. I says, Mo, you don't think we ought to go back? No, he says, I'll enjoy the course more when I can get on the whites and then hit the greens on the par fives. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gus, there must have been some great matches at Rockaway with the.
Well,
with,
there were so many good
so
players.
many
Jerry
good
Kesselring,
players,
was he was the first one that really got, he was a top amateur in Ontario for many, many years. And then I remember, I think he won the Ontario Open. And I used to caddy for Jerry Kesselring, and I also shagged golf balls for him. I'd have a baseball glove, and I'd be out there shagging balls. And I could shag everything up to about a 3-iron, then it would sting too much. And Jerry hit everything with a gentle hook. And Mo absolutely adored Jerry Kesselring.
He did.
And I remember Jerry won in Windsor, the Ontario Open.
Strong American field.
Yeah, and I think Freddie Hawkins got up and made a speech. Jerry won the tournament. He was an amateur and couldn't collect the purse money. And I think Fred Hawkins was a low pro, so he got the check. And he got up and made a speech. He said, if somebody doesn't put this young man on the tour, I'll get some money and I'll sponsor him. And I think Bud Knight from Scarborough ended up putting Jerry Kesselring on the tour.
That's right.
And for some reason or other, it just didn't work out for Jerry. He didn't enjoy traveling, and he just couldn't stick it out. But because of Jerry, then Mo come along. And then we had, there were probably 25 guys that could shoot par or better at Rockaway. And a lot of them couldn't afford to play tournaments because it was a working man's golf course. And there were a lot of factory workers. Westmount was the private club there in town, and Rockaway was a good golf course, and we had a great golf pro in Lloyd Tucker. And Jerry Knechtel was an outstanding amateur that could have probably been a pro, but he decided to go to college and become a president of a big company in the United States. But there were so many good players at that time, and it started with Kesselring, and then Mo, and then Gary Cowan, and my son started there. He won the Canadian Junior and went on to Ohio State. There were just so many good players, and it all started, they worked so hard. Like Mo would hit balls for hours and hours, and it's true. I've seen his hands where he had, when the guys used to play in tournaments throughout Ontario, and they would see certain players with Band-Aids on their fingers, they knew they were the guys from Rockaway.
Yeah.
And it started because of Mo and Kesselring, because they worked so hard at their game. And that's one thing Mo did when he was on tour. He always encouraged the guys to work, the young guys. And he'd come off the tour and he'd say, well, there's one or two out there that are really working hard, but not too many of them, But Ralph Wechter, I could just name, and Nick, you knew them all, and Irv, you played with a lot of them. Tony Matlock, there were just so many good players.
That was my vintage.
Really good players.
Yeah. But,
you talk about the Kesselring field day, the Jerry Kesselring being the prime player in those years. They had a tournament at Rockaway called the Jerry Kesselring Field Day.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a two-part story, but it's very interesting. It's about those years and 3 years ago. And I'm playing a practice round the day before the tournament with Mo. And there's 4 of us playing. And we're all playing pretty good, okay? And we get to 18, and Mo's about 7 up on all of us, okay? Because he owned that golf course. Now, the 18th hole is kind of a short par 5, or it was then, with a green tucked
short
up.
par 4.
Tucked up top?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mo says on the tee, who's going to press? Not a word. Come on, somebody press me. No. So he turns to me, singles me out. We're playing for about $1, I think. And he says, I'll give you a shot. And I said, a shot on this hole? Double or nothing. I said, you're on, okay? So I play the hole beautifully. Okay, make 4, okay, with a shot, and I lose. Okay? So Mo makes 2. He knocks it.
Hold his wedge.
Hold his wedge or 9-iron, made it 2, so I lose my money. Okay? Now, we'll go forward to 3 years ago. It's my last year at Maple Downs, And at this point in time, Moe is God. He is Golf Digest, Titleist. He is world-renowned. He probably could have given a clinic a day in the United States for serious, serious money. He was really well thought of and esteemed, and people looked for him. And I wanted something special that last summer at Maple Downs. So I phoned Gus, and I said to Gus, Gus, you talked to Moe? He says, yep. I said, I want Moe to do me a favor. Gus said, what's that? I want him to do a clinic for my members this summer. And Gus paused for a minute, and he said, Moe will do that for you. And I said, I'll get Nick up there, too, and Nick will give a clinic on the short game, and then Moe will do a clinic on the long game. A couple of months goes by, and I track Moe down at Foxwood, okay, back in May. And I haven't talked to him now since I talked to Gus. So I get Moe on the phone, right? Hi, Moe. Hi, pal. I said, Moe, I want you to do me a favor. I always do you favors. I said, what? What do you mean you always do me favors? He said, gave you a shot in a par 4 once.
he remembered. Oh, yeah.
This is 50 years later, okay? And I started to laugh. He did not forget anything, anything. In the meantime, he came up graciously, and Lauren Rubenstein was there, and the whole CTV crew was there, and they did a documentary.
That was very good. That was excellent.
Dick was there,
Yeah,
and he put on a clinic that day. Hey, Nick?
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic.
They had CTV.
He rises to the occasion. He loved it.
I must just, one last thing about this clinic. CTV had a cameraman way back at the end of the range in the bushes, okay? And he wasn't to come out until Moe had gotten into the heavy stuff, okay? Into the woods. So this guy's hiding behind a tree, and he's got the camera. And Moe has gone from the orange now to a forward. And as Moe stands up to the ball, he sees this guy run out, and Moe goes, and I've got 250 people there. We had grandstands, barred in by the, anyway. Moe sees this guy run out, and he goes, who's that? I said, it's cameraman. Oh, he shouldn't be there. He says he shouldn't be there. And Moe started darting forwards at this guy, okay? The guy didn't know where to run. He was running back and forth all over the range, trying to film, and this ball zipping at him. Quite an exhibition, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there's so much, just so much.
One of the amazing things that I ran into with Moe is that he had a tremendous retentive memory. And when I was scheduled to play in the Wellington Cup team in Calgary for the National Amateur, I'd always run into Moe and I'd say, Moe, I knew that he'd played the Calgary. How the hell do I play this golf course? He says, get a sheet of paper. Got a sheet of paper. He says, on hole number 1, make sure that you drive to the right. Hole number 2, don't use your driver. Use a 3-wood. Play left. And he would map out. He remembered every shot that he ever hit, no matter where he played across Canada. He had that fantastic retentive memory, a picture of every hole that he played and how to play it. That's amazed me. Yeah. He was one of a kind.
It was that week is like a whole chapter in my life because it was very unusual. The Masters was legendary, and I remember driving in Magnolia days before the first round. We got there very early. Excuse me. And Moe had a comfort zone with me. We were together, we traveled together, we stayed together. And when he registered, probably on a Friday or Saturday prior to the first round, they told him he was going to stay in the crow's nest upstairs. That did not excite him. And we got there, actually, and he registered and got his PIN and what have you, and they told him about the crow's nest where some of the amateurs, not the amateurs that were really well socially connected didn't stay there. They all stayed in private houses, okay? Like your Charlie Coes and your Bill Campbells and Venturis and that. But Dean Beeman and Baxter and fellows like that would stay up there with Moe. And we registered, and Moe immediately wanted to go out and play. Okay, I mean, this was Augusta. It was around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I didn't know the workings of Augusta any more than Moe did. So away we go down the first fairway. Okay, Moe's got his bag on his shoulder, and I'm walking beside him. And he hits it up there left of the first bunker, just short of the bunker there. And all of a sudden, 2 carts come blazing down the fairway. What are you doing? I'm playing a practice round. You can't do that. Well, I'm in the tournament. What's your name? Moe Norman. You need a caddy. No, I don't know it. I'm fine. Carry my bag, no problem. And I'm watching all this. And I guess about 15 minutes later, another gentleman came out, a more senior gentleman by the name of Cliff Roberts. And,
Very senior.
and he was as gracious as can be. Mr. Norman, my name is Clifford Roberts. Hi, you need a caddy. Oh, you sure? Absolutely sure. Come with me. So he took him back. He got him a pretty good caddy anyway. And his pairing, the first round was a magnificent pairing. They treated him very well. He played with Harvey Ward and played directly in front of Middlecoff and Nelson. They were right behind him. And things were going well until Thursday night. That's when kind of everything fell through. You know, Thursday, he played with, second night, he played with Rosberg, I believe, Bob Rosberg. And there was no cut then. And Moe shot 78 and played very, very well. But unless you've really been on the greens at Augusta, you have no idea the movement. And that's the toughest set of greens I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there's no U.S. Open that I've ever been at, Oakland Hills, that has a set of greens like Augusta. Right, Richard? They've got, huh?
Mm-hmm. Undulation.
It's beyond anything. And you know, even in those years, they were fast. And Moe came off the golf course, not happy with his round, and was going to go to the range. And I said, why don't you go to the putting green, okay, instead of the range? No, I got to hit the ball closer. I said, okay. So anyway, I went to the other side of the range because the range is 2 parts, coming out Magnolia, going back to Washington. And Venturi and some of the other players were over there, and Moe was here. And next thing I know, Moe's having a long conversation with Snead, okay? And Snead's tinkering with Moe's grip, all right? Because Moe had, you know. Now, why Moe would listen to Sam blows me away, because Moe was hitting it better than Sam was, okay? But Sam was Sam, okay? And the fact that I was not there with Moe that evening probably was the undoing, because I wasn't staying there, and Moe wasn't coming with me back to town. He was upstairs. And when I got up there the next morning, Moe's hands were just...
bleeding.
They were bleeding. They were actually bleeding.
Yeah.
Okay, and he went out with Vic Gezzi and played the front 9, couldn't hold the club, and had to quit at the end of 9. But it probably would not have happened had we'd been together. But I went back into town because I wasn't staying there after the round. And that's it. Yeah.
And Cliff Roberts didn't like that, but because they had to go get the pro in the pro shop to finish off Gezzi's round.
Yeah.
I remember that.
As a matter
And
of fact, it's
that tied up the
interesting.
tournament.
I went to, when Moe quit at the end of 9, because he really couldn't hold the club, I went to a 10. I followed Gezzi to 10 to explain, to try to, you know, explain what was going on. And Gezzi said, where's Norman? I said, he can't play. He's got his hands are all bleeding and they're swelled up and they're really sore. And he didn't even look at me. He said, you play on one leg, you don't pick up at the Masters. That was his comment.
That's true.
Yeah. That was it.
Yeah. Well, he always, playing, and when he was giving his exhibitions, I attended a lot of them. And the question would always come up, Moe, how hard are you gripping it? He says, I'm drawing blood. And he had a callus on this part of his hand where he gripped it that must have been 1/8 of an inch thick. Could have gone to a pane of glass and cracked it. But in later years, he stopped. He went into a softer grip. But he sure gripped it tight whenever I'd ask that question. And then the other thing that Moe always did was he always put this was the ball, put his club here. And nobody in the gallery, and I've attended a lot of his exhibitions, would say, Moe, why are you putting the club back there? And I'd bring the subject up, Moe, tell these people why you're putting it there. So he says, well, I'm already into my turn. And he says, I've already combed the grass from there to the ball, and then another foot, he'd brush the grass going back with all his irons. And often when I played with him, in the latest years, I'd hit a bad shot, maybe on one of the holes. I said, Moe, what did you see? He said, I'm not telling you. You've been playing long enough, you should have felt it. I said, I didn't feel it.
God.
So 5 holes later, I'd confront him again. I says, Moe, God damn it, what did I do wrong? He says, you picked it up. He says, comb or stay home. Yeah, that was his expression. He meant brush the grass going back. This is what a lot of people don't do, and they should. Because you pick it up, you're dead meat. You got to be careful about how you take the club away from the ball, and he was a great example. When he'd give his exhibitions, he had a silver dollar he'd had for years. He'd put it down 30 inches behind the ball, and he'd hit that silver dollar on the way back. That's one of the things he practiced. So his arc was very wide. Moe had a very wide arc. There was nothing circular and small about it. But he was amazing. He picked up all this stuff by himself by hitting hundreds and hundreds of balls. And he was tops. Well,
Go ahead. Dick.
Gosh, you answer that one.
Well, Lloyd Tucker, what he would do with all the juniors at Rockaway, as soon as you'd come off the golf course, he immediately would ask you how you made out, and he wouldn't watch you hit golf balls, but he'd always check your grip. And we all started with fairly strong grips. It was almost like if you remember the Ben Hogan articles, that's basically the way Lloyd Tucker taught. And most of the guys that come out of Rockaway hook the ball. And if you study the Hogan articles and you were to kind of stay with them and try and perfect them, you would end up hooking the ball a little bit. But Lloyd worked a lot with Moe. He would always, even though Moe had, was very upright with his legs and had the club behind the ball, I've broken Moe's swing down several times, and his angles on his golf swing are absolutely perfect. I mean, they really are. It's amazing. But Lloyd had a lot to do with that, and he would check his grip, and he would make sure his shoulders were nice and square, and his hips were square, and his right side was a little lower than his left side, and he'd always make sure. He would do that with everybody. Anybody that was interested in improving, that's what Lloyd Tucker would do, and it would be every time you come off the course. And it could be if you played 5 times a week, 5 times Lloyd would say, let me have a look at you. And he helped Moe a little bit with his short game and so on.
Why were his golf clubs so heavy? What did he?
Because he was strong enough he wanted to feel mass. Swing weights, the rest, forget it. I always asked him that. I says, what is there about you wanting to have them damn clubs so heavy? And he says, I like mass. I want to feel mass. And nobody could swing E3. Whenever a set was made for him, E3. Now, Barney Adams made a set for him, made a set for me of the tight lies when they first come out. So we happened to be in Titusville, and Barney just happened to be in the area, come in just to see the guys and say hello. And he says, Moe, are you using my tight lies that I gave you? He says, no, I can't use those clubs. He says, what's wrong? He says, they're too light. He says, what do you want in a swing weight? He says, I want E3. He says, where are they? They're in Moe's trunk. He says, give me those clubs. So he took the clubs, and the cobalt is a metal that's heavier than lead. So I said to Barney, I says, Barney, how are you going to get those clubs without putting powdered lead down the shaft, which you used to do? How are you going to get those clubs to E3? He says, I'll go to the foundry, and I tell them to put more cobalt in there. So about 2 weeks later, here comes the clubs, E3. Heavy as hell. But Very few fellas could handle his clubs. They were that
You
heavy.
know what very few people know is that George Newson's clubs were E3,
Yeah.
and they were an 8.0 frequency match shaft. To give you a parallel, I think Watson in his prime used 7.4s. 8 is stiff like Moe's,
Yeah.
and George used E3s.
Yeah.
And if
Was it to keep it online? Like, what was the reason you felt?
he liked mass, he liked the feel of the
liked the
club.
mass,
He
yeah.
liked the
It was like
mass,
a hammer.
exactly what Nick said.
Yeah.
He felt no deviation in the club, okay? And I believe, if memory serves me correct, Hogan's club swang out a E also, Ben Hogan.
Yeah.
But Moe was very strong. His wrists and he
Oh, they
he
were-
would pinch you. When we were kids,
He had
we were
muscle.
deathly afraid of Moe. 'Cause
Yeah.
he would grab you.
Oh, yeah.
and he,
Oh,
and-
yeah.
But you know, I can remember Moe was squeezing a golf ball from the time that I knew him, and he did it for probably 50 years. He had 2 balls in his car, and when he was driving or if he was sitting there reading, he loved to read near the end of his life and listen to tapes and so on. Which I wish he would have done that earlier in his career. He had probably made it on the PGA Tour because he learned so much about life, period. But he was so strong, his wrists were so strong, and he was always squeezing this ball, and he encouraged, that's one of the few, Gary Cowan and Moe never really were close for some reason or other. I don't know why, because we all grew up together, but that's one thing he did encourage Gary Cowan to do, was squeeze a golf ball at a very young age. And I remember when Gary was 13 years old, Gary was squeezing the ball. And of course, you know, Gary was strong and was able to hit the ball a long way. But Moe was very, very strong in the wrist. I don't know of anybody that had stronger hands than Moe Norman.
He was always critical of Tiger's short game. From 100 yards in, he says, he's too far from the hole, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. He says, you know what, and this is just in the recent years, he says, I'd like to meet him and just talk to him for a half an hour about that shot, and then I'd show him. Yeah, he always hammered, he said, whenever he'd watch the tournaments with Tiger's in, he says, that's a lousy shot. He should have been closer. From 90 yards, he's 20 feet from the hole. And he had one shot that impressed me, and that was from 100 yards in. He had what I always call the Rockaway move. The greens at Rockaway were like this table, hard as hell. And I'd say, Moe, when he'd have a shot over a pin or something, how did you develop that Rockaway move? He says, I had to develop it at Rockaway because the greens were like a rock. And he says, and he had a shot from I'd say from 50 yards to 100 yards. And when we'd be playing, just in recent years, I'd look at the shot and I says, Rockaway move, Moe? Yeah. And he would hit that ball straight up. He had great sense of elevation and trajectory, and that thing had come down almost straight. On the hardest greens, it would only move about 3 or 4 feet. He was amazing. And this is what he thought was wrong with Tiger. He says, I'd like to show him how to do that. And he could do it too. I think shooting those 59s, 3 of them, it had to be. And he had, there's another little story. I've had 16 hole-in-ones over the years, and Moe has had 17. And a year ago, I'm on the 3rd hole at Brantford Par 3, and I get another hole-in-one, get it 16. He says, why you? God damn it, why you? He says, I just want one more, then I don't give a damn. I wanted 18 hole-in-ones. But it was amazing because his ball was always around the hole. I was waiting. He had to get one. He didn't, and it bothered him.
I think getting into the Hall of Fame after all those years, you know, Moe didn't show a lot of emotion, but that day when he was put in the Hall of Fame at Foxwood, and that's where he wanted to have it, and it just so happened our family owned the golf course. They wanted to have it at the Royal York, and they were hoping to, you know, the RCJ was going to have a big audience there, and Moe insisted that he has it at Foxwood, and he only wanted so many people there. And the RCJ was very, very good about that, and I really appreciated what they did that day. They allowed Moe to invite, I think, 30 people, and they invited 20 people, and they really did it nicely. But I think even though he showed a lot of emotion that night after it was over, because he kind of thought he would never get into the Hall of Fame. And to some people, I don't think it's a big deal, but it really is. And I think that really, really touched Moe. And I think the other thing, you know, when he got the Titleist deal and when he was on the front cover of Golf Digest, I mean, that is really something for anybody to be on the front of Golf Digest. And that was, I think, about a 13, I have the copy of Golf Digest here, and I think that was in '96. And I think there were 13 pages of Moe Norman, and that's unheard of. I don't think Tiger Woods has ever had 13 pages. So I think, you know, those achievements, and he would, when Moe got pretty sick and I would sit and talk with him, he would bring those things up and he would talk about them, about being into the Hall of Fame and being on the counter, or the front counter of Golf Digest.
Wally Uline, who is responsible for the support of Moe, tells a story. One of the most powerful images he ever remembers seeing was, and Gus was there personally to see it, but after Moe did speak with Mr. Uline, Moe wasn't overly concerned about the money, and he had one request. Down at the PGA show in Orlando, there's booths of manufacturers, and at the front of the Titleist booth there was a big area of television screens. And Moe asked Mr. Uline if he could be up there. And the next year, when Wally walked into the booth, he said one of the most powerful images he ever seen was Moe, all alone, standing in front of the television monitors and so proud to see himself up there.
It was in '95, and Moe never ever made a lot of money playing golf. I mean, the most he ever made was maybe $25,000, and it actually goes back to '86 when Moe didn't have any money, and at that time there were 2 or 3 years when Moe didn't drive a Cadillac, and the one year he had a Chev, but he wanted to have a big trunk so he could put all his belongings in there. And one year he had a Buick, and they were used, they were not new. And in 1986, I'd give him a little bit of money that summer, and I didn't realize that he was really in bad shape financially. And he was in arrears at his motel and so on, and they were calling the golf club. And finally, Butch Martin, a good friend of Moe's that works at Stettelbar Motors in Kitchener, he would always make arrangements for Moe to get a car. And Butch called me and said, the bailiff's coming to pick up Moe's car. He owes $8,000 on the car, and it's only worth $2,000. So that was in August, and I said to Audrey, we have to do something, you know, really quickly for Moe. So I said, we're going to have an appreciation day for him. And I went to the board of directors at Westmount, and I said, is there any way? I wasn't going to ask for the golf course because we'd already bought Foxwood. We didn't have a clubhouse per se, so Westmount said, by all means, you can have the clubhouse. And so we had a golf outing at Foxwood during the day, and then we had the clubhouse at Westmount at night. And it was amazing. We had such a great response. We raised 20-some-odd thousand, and I know you were there, Nick, and I know you replied, Irv. And there were people sending in. It was $100 to play golf and to be part of Moe's Appreciation Day. So we paid off his car and paid off a few of his debts, and he'd lost a lot of confidence then. He wasn't playing very well, and he'd put a lot of weight on. And right after that, he started playing well again. He kept winning the Canadian Seniors and the Ontario Seniors and participating in some tournaments. But that money disappeared quickly, and then he just kind of lived from day to day from probably 90 to 95. And I know that Bill Chisholm, who was a good friend of yours, Nick, and he was a friend of mine, he was a member at Westmount, and I know Bill gave him some money to kind of get him through one year, but he never had any money. And he'd always live, you know, in a motel, and that's where he wanted to be. And I'd say, Moe, we'll get you a nice boarding house. He said, no, I want to live in a motel. That's where I want to live. So in '95, and Paul is the president of Titleist, but you didn't start there until 2000. But it was somebody, I think it was Max Oxford from your company, called me. And it was probably directed by Wally Uline, you know, the CEO of Titleist Worldwide. And they wanted to know Moe's life history. And I said, well, you know, I was around when he was 20 years old. So I kind of explained to him about Moe, how his life had taken its place throughout all these years. And they said, oh, thank you very much. And then I got another call. This was in November. Then I got a call in December, and I think it was from Wally Uline's secretary, but I'm not sure. This was out of the United States. They basically asked the same question. So I told them all about Moe and, you know, how he's able to, you know, eke out a living. So they said, could you be at the Titleist booth at the PGA show in January? And it's a worldwide show where all the manufacturers come and they display their goods for the following year. And I said, by all means. They said, we'd like you there at 1 o'clock. So I was there, and I saw Paul because I was with a friend of mine that come later on, Don Edwards, who was playing hockey, who was a friend of Paul's. And Paul was in the New York area at that time working for Titleist. So Mr. Uline walked out. I had no idea what he was going to give Moe. And Mr. Uline walked out with a straight face, and he said hello. He introduced himself and I was with my wife Audrey and my two sons, Danny and Mark, and we had Moe. And by this time, Moe had kind of shied away, which he usually does. And Mr. Uline came out, he introduced himself. He says, I want to give Moe $5,000 a month. I'm not sure if he said for the rest of his life, but you know, that's how it kind of.
Yeah, he said that.
He did say that. Well, I was there, and I'm not sure if I heard that. So just for fun, I said, is this Canadian or American? Because the American was much stronger than. He said, American by all means. So he said, I want you to go and tell Moe. And by this time, Moe had started to run away. And I said, Danny, you better grab Moe. He's going to take off. And we've been through this several times. So Danny kind of brought him back, and he was probably within 25 yards of Wally Uline. And I said, Moe, this man is going to give you $5,000 a month. And Moe said, what for? What for? What did I do? And then he was concerned as to what he had to do. And Wally said, I went back and I said, Wally, I said, what does Moe have to do for this? Wally Uline said, he doesn't have to do anything. I want him to live the life the way he lives it. I just don't want him living out of the trunk of his car. And the only thing I'd like to have is 50 feet of his golf swing, so it could be in the golf archives 50 years from now. That's all I want. I don't want anything else. So I went back and told Moe. In the meantime, Ernie Els is on the Titleist booth, and it's going round and round, and it was about 6 feet in height because he had won the U.S. Open, I believe. And Moe right away said, I want to be on there. If I'm going to be part of Titleist, I want my picture on there. So finally, Mr. Uline came out, shook hands, and Moe had broken down. He was just sobbing and crying. Well, before long, all of a sudden, these cameras appeared, and Moe was walking around, and people were following. It spread like wildfire that Titleist had done this for Moe. And I know it wasn't for, Titleist wasn't looking for any publicity. I know that for a fact. I think it's just something that you know, Wally Uline wanted to do. It was a humanitarian thing. And he had probably seen Moe at some of these clinics that Nick had talked about, you know, where Moe would hit balls for, you know, the players. I remember at like Bay Hill, Moe would hit balls 3 or 4 times during the practice rounds on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. I've got one funny story that happened not too long ago, just before Moe passed away. It was the last year he was in Florida. Moe would always get in his car when he was bored, and he would drive around visiting golf clubs. And he had a lot of friends in Florida, golf pros. And he went into Bay Hill, and he kind of yammered onto the practice tee. He wasn't going to hit balls. And Palmer's teeing off with his friends at noon. And he sees Moe, and he comes running over, and he says, Moe, he says, are you still hitting it straight? And Moe says, oh, yeah, not like you. I don't get thistles up my rear end. That was the end of the conversation. That was it. And there was a golf pro with Moe, and the club pro and he come back and told me that story. I couldn't believe it. I said, Moe, well, didn't you talk to me? He said, oh, no. He says, that's my hello to him. But the Titleist, you know, it wasn't the money I mean, it was great for Moe to have that money because he did not have any money. He had a contract with Natural Golf, but it wasn't a lot of money prior to the Titleist deal, and it really wasn't a deal. It was no contract. You know, the 5,000 would come to my office, and a couple times Moe would lose the check after he'd pick it up from me. And then I had an accountant that looked after Moe for many years, and Moe would come back from Florida and just throw him a brown paper bag and say, hey, you figure it out, you know. And for a long time, Moe never paid tax. Moe never filed income tax because he never made enough money. And, you know, I would get the odd phone call, and Moe would say, I'm in trouble with the tax department and the IRS and so on. And Alf Heeks, who was the lawyer for the Canadian PGA, do you remember Alf Heeks? He's a wonderful guy. Well, Alfie would look after that problem. And for the first probably 10 years, this guy never charged Moe anything. Moe would give him a dozen used golf balls, and that was about it. But I think mentally, that deal with Titleist probably put another 10 years on Moe's life. It wasn't the money. It was just kind of the acceptance that somebody would do that for Moe. We got calls from all over the place. There was a phone call from Japan where they wanted Moe to go over and put a clinic on for a week. And he was supposed to do 2 clinics or 3 clinics a day. It was $100,000 US. And that was a lot of money in those days, and Moe would not go. And he would say, will you go with me? I'd say, well, Moe, I'm still working, I can't go. Well, he says, I can't eat that food. He says, he says, you know, they don't have my food over there. And and then I remember we got a call from New York, and it was a big president of a big bank, and he was running a charity golf tournament. And he said, this was after Titleist had done their thing, and Moe was on, and the following year, Moe was on the front page of Golf Digest. And this fella had seen Moe somewhere, and the president of this company, and they're running a big charity tournament, and they raised almost $400,000 a day in this one day for this charity. So part of his charity tournament was to bring Moe in for a golf clinic. And he said, I'll pay Moe $25,000 and I'll fly him in. And Moe says, well, I can't fly to New York by myself. He said, will you go with me? And I said, sure, I'll go with you. So I said, okay, so we were going to do the deal, and Moe backs out, and he wouldn't go. And I had to phone the gentleman and tell him. And he said, well, Moe doesn't like to fly. And I said, well, I really don't know what the reason is. And I never questioned Moe a lot of times on different things because, you know, I didn't want to upset him because certain things would upset Moe, especially when he would be afraid if he had to meet people or do certain things for different people. And finally, the guy said, "Look, I'll give him $30,000. We'll send up a chauffeur-driven limousine, and I'll make him the man of the year on Wall Street, because he had all this publicity on the Titleist deal. The man of the year on Wall Street. This is unbelievable." And Moe would not go. Moe he just would not do it. But
Just amazing.
But mentally, I think that Titleist deal really helped Moe. Like, I know that he just kind of flourished after that. You know, he kind of come out of his shell. But you know, his clinics back when he ran out of money in '87, it was my son Danny said, you know, every tournament we have at Foxwood, and it was we had 500 members, we had 27 holes, and we had a lot of pay-as-you-play, a lot of tournaments, a lot of outside tournaments. So Danny would include Moe for $100. And Moe would give a clinic, and it would be part of you know, an outside group coming in to have a tournament. And then it went from there to $200, and then it went to $300. And all of a sudden, we're getting so many requests. Danny phoned me one day. I was still a pro at Westmount, and we were running Foxwood. And my wife and Danny were running Foxwood. Danny said, "Dad, I can't look after Moe anymore. He's just getting too many requests." So we had the Canadian PGA office look after Moe's clinics, and he could have given probably 70 or 80 a year. He would always kind of cut it off at 30, but it was amazing. And I remember getting a phone call from a basketball player in Utah that was playing the Moe Norman method, and he kept me on. There must be a time change over there, because it was 1 o'clock in the morning when he called me, and he kept me on the phone like for 2 hours talking about Moe Norman and his swing. He says, well, how can I meet this guy? I said, well, you're going to have to come to Canada to meet him. You know, I can let you know where he's going to give clinics. But Moe had so many phone calls from different people from the United States, and there were people that would come up and want to see Moe just to watch him hit golf balls. And I would send him to Rockaway to look at the room that they have there for Moe Norman. And, he had such a big following, and it all kind of, at one time I was really kind of hoping that everything would go away. and Moe would just live his little life and not, get all this publicity. But when the Golf Digest thing hit and the Titleist thing happened, it was just unbelievable. And but Moe was an interesting man. I mean, every day was a challenge for Moe, and it was always fun to see Moe. And we'd always look forward. He always had a problem. There was always something going on in his life that was different.
I think that keeping him off the America's Cup team, when they decided that Moe didn't have the deportment that they liked, and it was a rough deal. And when they arrived, took his plane fare ticket away from him, his jacket, his slacks, his shoes, and I think that Moe talked about that a lot to me. That was a big disappointment to him, that he was taken off the team, and the excuse was that as he tells it, he says that and I shouldn't say this, I'm in the RCGA building, that the RCGA felt that he should be professionalized because he sold his prizes. He would sell his prizes before he'd even play in a tournament. I've seen him go up to some guys and see that television set? I'm going to win that today. You want to buy it off me? And the guy says, yeah, I'll give you an offer. Give me a couple of hundred and you can have it. I'll win it before this thing's over, and he would. And toasters and stuff like that. He'd flog them all. And I don't know, it just didn't sit well with the RCGA. And they professionalized him. Yeah.
I think that perhaps there probably are a number of things that, kind of victimized Moe, and which he really didn't have any control over. But I think, and Gus, it's funny. I don't know what year Gus and Audrey adopted Moe, okay? But it's not easy to adopt someone that's older than you are, okay? And Moe was looked after by them beyond anyone's knowledge here, okay? If Moe was hurt, he'd run to them. It was difficult for Moe to not have real family, but this was real family. They were very special. And when Moe was not accepted on the PGA Tour, which was very sad the way it came about, okay? It did not come about well. And Moe went running back to Gus. First stop from, was it New Orleans?
New Orleans. Moe had the best two finishing rounds in New Orleans, and it was his 10th tournament. He had won the bursary. And in those days, we sent three, I think, Wilfie, you might have won it one year, where the three top players, you had to be 30 years of age or under to participate in this tournament. And the three top winners would be an automatic, I think, maybe it wasn't 10 tournaments, but it was enough money to get you on the U.S. tour without having the $1,500. And Moe played in New Orleans, and Audrey and I had rented a house in Daytona, right across from Riviera Golf Club, where we had been for a couple of years. And Moe had the best two finishing rounds in New Orleans. And I'm reading the morning paper, and I just can't believe it. I'm so happy. And I said to Audrey, they're coming to Pensacola next week. Moe's going to win. And 2 hours later, there's a knock on the door, and it's Moe. And I said, what are you doing? How come you're not in Pensacola? He says, I'll never play that tour again. I don't know exactly what happened. I know he hit the ball off a big tee on the first hole in New Orleans, and the people just went crazy. They couldn't believe it. And he did that about 3 or 4 times throughout the tournament. And when the tournament was over, I think some of the influential players on that tournament undressed him a little bit. They basically said, Moe, if you're going to come out here, you can't do that. We want you to dress a little neater. We'd like you to get your teeth fixed. Just a lot of crazy things. And there was a golf pro that come through Daytona Beach about 2 weeks after that, and he told me the story. And he said, and Moe, that whole winter, Moe would come to our place every night with his 6 bottles of pop, And I'd play cards with him until 2 in the morning, and he was really shook up, and he never ever went back on that tour. And, you know, I don't know if he wanted to get to that next, you know, if he wanted to sacrifice himself hard enough to get to that next echelon. Like, I think he was so shook up because of that, that he just, you know, he felt comfortable playing in Canada. I mean, Moe would play 54 holes of golf and maybe miss 2 greens. And on good golf courses, where now if the guys are playing and they hit 13 or 14 greens a round, that's pretty good. But Moe would play all week long and never miss a green. I mean, his shot making was unbelievable. But I know that episode, and I never really told a lot of people about that, but that actually happened, and Moe was really shook up. I mean, it bothered him. You know, they really stripped him down, and I think Balding knew a little bit about it, who was involved. I really don't know who was involved when they got him in the locker room, and basically. But you know, Moe, he was able to hit that thing off this big tee and nail it right down the middle. Of course, these people had never seen this before. He did it on the. He told me he did it 3 times in that round, and you know, the guys that were calling the shots on the tour at that time, and there really wasn't a lot of money out there then. They just said, Moe, you can't do that. You have to. And you know, nowadays, they would welcome Moe on the tour. I mean, if Moe could play now and play the way he did back then and do the things that he does now, he's not going to be as big as Tiger Woods, but I'll tell you, he'd be fairly close as a draw. But Moe could never play the tour. He couldn't play the pro-ams and socialize and have the dinners, and you have to do that. That's part of the game. And Moe could never do that. And I know you talk about Moe's disappointments, what he'd like to have achieved. Moe told me several times near the end of his life that he really wished that he could have treated people nicer. And he doesn't know why. Like, he says, I don't know why I couldn't treat people nicer. And that's why we really think that he had some autistic problems in him, because I don't know if it was a tone of a voice or a color of a sweater. We'd be in the clubhouse at Foxwood, and we'd have to watch him like a hawk, because we didn't know at certain times what Moe was going to do with people, you know. And for some reason or other, there were certain people that innocently would go up and ask Moe for an autograph, and Moe would just turn on them. And yet another person could walk up and you know, it happened with golf pros, good friends of golf pros that would see, you know, Moe, and they'd say, you know, I'm a good friend of John Hunt, and blah, and Moe couldn't care less, you know. And you know, but Moe did tell me, after he read a lot and he listened to a lot of tapes, he says, I really wish now that I could have treated people a lot nicer throughout my life. But he says, I don't know why I couldn't do it. And I think a lot of the times that I would, you know, I used to get upset at Moe at times when he would do these silly things, you know, but I always give him the benefit of the doubt.
As he mellowed in his older age and he got to read and listen to the tapes, and he would talk to me in the office about how much knowledge he had later in life that he regretted not being able to communicate to young people. He wished he would have known then what he knew now, and that was a regret of his.
He was a much more humble person, you know, the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, we were in and out of hospitals so many times, and I've taken him to so many doctors and blood clinics, and I mean, this was really something for Moe to see this. He had no idea that there was another world out there. I mean, he hadn't been to a doctor in 68 years. I don't think he was ever at a dentist. No. And never, ever in his life. And I tried to, so many times, I'd say, Moe, I've got it all lined up. We're going to a dentist. We're going to get, you know, fix you up. And he would say, okay, fine, but then he would always chicken out. And I remember one time we had a terrible episode at Foxwood with Moe. It was with a lady that was drinking wine, and she went up to Moe and said, Moe, I'm reading your book, and I just can't believe it's you. And Moe said, well, go away. I'm too busy. I'm watching TV. And she wouldn't leave Moe alone. And finally, Moe said something to her, and my wife happened to walk around, and Audrey said, Moe, that's enough. And the lady was visibly upset. Moe, I don't know exactly what Moe said to her, but in the meantime, Moe takes off. So he doesn't come back for about 2 days, and I get Moe in the banquet room, and I said, Moe, you can't come out here anymore. If you're gonna, we've talked about this so many times, you can't come out here anymore if you're gonna treat people like that. Just out of the blue, Mo says, should I see a psychiatrist? This is after all these years. And I said, yes. So I phoned my friend at Westmount, and I said, Dr. Coppolino, would you have a few sessions with Mo? He said, I'd love to. So now I go back and I see Mo, and I said, Mo, I've got it all set up. We're going to see the psychiatrist. And Mo says, okay. And the next day, Mo comes in. He's kind of sheepish. He comes up to me. He says, hey, pal. He says, you don't have to worry about the psychiatrist. I'm treating people much nicer now. But I mean, Mo's life every day, it was unbelievable. And he was so smart in a lot of ways. He knew what was happening around the world. I mean, it was amazing, the knowledge that he had. And he had such a big heart, but he just didn't know how to communicate with people. And I really don't think that he wanted to take that, do that extra thing to get to the big league. And I think it was all because he was so frightened. Like, I know for a fact in '81, we had the CPGA at Westmount, and we had a lot of world-class players. I don't know if you played there, Bobby. I think you probably did. And we had paid, yeah, that's right. We had paid Palmer $20,000, and I was in on the negotiations. Al Balding went to Orlando with me. We spent a week there. We had Palmer for 20. We paid Raymond Floyd 20. We paid Bob Charles $2,000. We had David Faraday there. We had Mark McNulty. We had Hugh Biaggi. We had a world-class field there. It was almost like an international PGA. And Mo was all upset he wasn't going to enter because they were not giving him any money. And in '81, he was playing pretty good. So I said, Mo, I'm going to put your entry in. And I paid the entry fee. It wasn't very much. It was maybe $150. So just before tea time, in the meantime, I think it was either Mark McNulty or Hugh Biaggi, I can't remember, had a pinched shoulder, and they said, could you maybe get somebody to help? And I said, sure, there's some doctors around here. So I kind of got some help, and then he said, I've lost some golf shoes. Is there a FootJoy salesman here? And I said, yeah, we'll get that looked after. So he said, how good is Mo? I'm playing with him. And I said, he's pretty good. But I said, you got to watch him closely because he hits quickly. So in the meantime, they get on the first green at Westmount. It's a par 5, and they couldn't get home in 2 that day. Hugh Biaggi goes down to mark his ball, and Mo putts. It almost hits his finger. And Hugh just looks at him. You can't believe this. So now Hugh still has the honor on the second hole. He tees off, and his tee flies out a little bit. And he goes to pick up his tee, and whoosh, ball goes right by his head. Now they get on the third tee, and Hugh can't believe this guy. He'd never seen him play before. He looks awkward. He's got the ball, the club way behind the ball. He's standing up, his hands up nice and high. Hugh just can't believe this. He's from South Africa. I'm not sure what country he's from, but they get on the third tee, wants to talk with Mo. So, everybody thinks that Tiger Woods was the first one to do this. Well, Mo's standing on the third tee, and he's got the ball on the end of the club, and he's talking to Hugh. And he's not even looking at the ball. He's just going like, well, Hugh couldn't believe this. Well, that night we had a party for the foreign players, and I think all the golf professionals, and Hugh Biaggi's telling all the players how good Mo was. And I'm getting to the end of my story, but I could not believe the number of foreign players that would stop playing to watch Mo hit a ball. I know for a fact that Mo 3-putted 16 and 17 on purpose, so he didn't have to play with Raymond Floyd and David Graham the last round, because he was so intimidated by these guys. And it was about 2 years, and Mo won $6,000. He finished third, and his check blew away. And one of the members found it down the first fairway and gave it to me. So I played a little trick on Mo. I kept the check in the pro shop, and Mo would come around and say, well, Mo, did you cash your check yet? Oh, no, it's in the trunk of my car. In the meantime, I've got his check. See, he was afraid to admit that he lost his check. So finally, after about a week, I said, Mo, I've got your check. It blew away, and 300 yards down the fairway off the first hole are homes. And I said, we were lucky it come back, and he would have got another check anyway. He finished third. He wouldn't have beat Raymond Floyd, but if he wouldn't have 3-putted on purpose, he'd have finished second. So it took about 2 years, and I got him in a weak moment. And I thought, this really bothered me. I'm finally going to get it out. And I said to him, Mo, I know for a fact you 3-putted 16 and 17 on purpose. He said, I've done that lots of times. He said, in playoffs, he said, I let the younger guy win. I've won so many times, I don't have to win anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's the way Mo was.
Could we hear something about his autistic powers, which he had?
Oh, yeah, I'm confident that Mo is autistic. All of the things that I experienced with him showed autism, because he amazed me. That's all I can say. And I considered the fact that I don't know whether Gus.
Well, you know, I'd ask different doctors, and a lot of them would say yes. You know, he was a functioning autistic savant, really.
That's
He
right.
wasn't as severe as, you know, if you see a lot of young children. And my wife and I tried to study that, you know, for a while, especially the last, you know, probably 7 or 8 years when Moe wasn't feeling very well. And, you know, we tried to learn a little bit about it. But they're definitely, Moe was different. I mean, I played golf with his brother 2 weeks ago, who really has a beautiful golf swing, Richard, and really a nice guy. And I asked him a little bit about, you know, Moe growing up and so on. He said, well, he said he was just different. He was totally different.
Yeah.
And the priest that did and we had an unbelievable funeral for Moe, and then that's something that I'll never forget. And the number of people that were at that church for that funeral. And
Even Wally Uline came over.
yeah, and Wally flew up, and Wally wouldn't even come to the Canadian Open, but yet
Right.
he flew up for Moe's funeral. And you know, the priest that performed that funeral that day, Moe went to school at St. Jerome's. It was a Catholic school, and the priest was the priest for that school, and he said, you know, Moe was different when he was younger. He said, you know, we didn't kick him out of school. He ran out of school. Mm-hmm. And I talked to different people, and they didn't know for sure, but I can tell you that Barry Morrow, who wrote The Rain Man, you know, had been phoning for almost a year and a half trying to come up to see Moe. And I would say, Moe, there's a gentleman from Hollywood who would like to come up and talk to you. And Moe would say, no, keep him away from me, keep him away from me. So this fella, he really seemed nice on the phone, and he had told me that he'd written the script for The Rain Man and won an Emmy for it and so on. And he also did a couple other famous movies. And he said, I really want to come up and meet Moe. And he said, you don't know what I'm all about. And I kept making excuses why he shouldn't come up. And I thought, why would you want to come up and see Moe? I mean, we know what Moe's like. I just didn't want him to waste his time or feel that he was wasting his time. And in the meantime, my son went to school with Chris Perry, and who plays the tour, and he roomed with Joey Sindelard and Chris. So from the time Chris was 20 years old, he'd always ask me to watch him hit balls, and I would. And before long, he'd always say, come on, you got to come and help me a little bit. So I would do that. The odd time, he'd fly me to Milwaukee or someplace, and I'd watch him hit balls when he was struggling. So the only way he would repay, he'd always offer to give me money, and I would never take money. But he would invite Danny and I to the Jack Nicklaus Memorial Tournament in Columbus, Ohio. That's where Chris lived. Then he'd fly Danny and I to Vegas. We'd be his guests for the week, and he'd take Audrey and I to the Masters with him. And anyways, this Barry Morrow said, I know you're going to Vegas the next week. He called me. He said, I'm coming over to meet you whether you like it or not. I said, okay, fine. So he shows up at this hotel, and he was the nicest guy. I could not believe that this guy was a Hollywood guy. He was just like any one of us in this room. So I went back and I said, Moe, I can't believe this guy. I think you should meet him. And Moe says, well, whatever you think, pal. If you think I should meet him, we'll meet him. This was in October, just the same time they're playing the Las Vegas Today. And it just so happened that year Moe, had the heart attack in the end of October, and we went through a bunch of different things, and Barry wanted to come up, and I said, Barry, you're going to have to delay it. Moe's had a heart attack, and Barry was quite concerned. And in the meantime, Moe was in intensive care, and they were going to release him. And I said, you can't release him. You got to get him to London. They got to operate on him. We knew his arteries were plugged. So I called all my markers in and said, I don't care. You got to put him in the hospital. We'll wait for 2 weeks for cancellation or whatever. So to make a long story short, we did that. They sat in the university hospital, and there's some unbelievable stories about Moe being in the hospital for a week, and those poor nurses that had to look after him. And Ernie Hauser was running back and forth with me every day, and we'd sit there and talk to Moe and so on, try and keep him happy. But anyways, he went through the surgery, and Barry phoned and said, I want to come up. Moe was recuperating. It was in January. And with autism, Barry, doing The Rain Man, he had to live with some of these people before he could write the script on The Rain Man. And I said, you know, Barry, we're not even sure what Moe is all about. And so Barry come up, and Audrey and I picked him up. It was in January, and it was raining that night. It wasn't snowing. Picked him up at the Toronto airport, and he stayed with Audrey and I for a week. And that night, it was 11 o'clock at night when we were coming back to Kitchener. I said, would you like to meet Moe? He said, sure. And I said, well, he's in this motel just down the road here, and it wasn't a fancy place, trust me. So I knock on the door, and I said, Moe, it's Gus. He said, oh, hi, pal. He opened the door, and he had the operation in November, so he was still recuperating, but he could, Nick and he were going over to the golf bubble at that time, and he was trying to maybe hit a few balls, and you were hitting balls. And the golf bubble was right across the road from where I had him in the motel. So Moe comes to the door, and I said, Moe, I want you to meet Barry Morrow. And Moe says, oh. He says, you look like a knucklehead. Oh. That was the first reaction. If Moe calls you a knucklehead, he likes you, okay?
Yeah.
So now Moe's in bed. He has just his shorts on, and he has two golf clubs, and he's watching them. He's watching the Golf Channel. Well, this couldn't have been any better for Barry Morrow. He could not believe this. And of course, Moe's room was just scattered with clothes and socks and so on. And it was just an ordinary one single room. And Barry said, okay, Moe, he said, and I told Moe that for 3 or 4 days, Moe was going to drive us around and show us where he lived and where he went down the hill when he had the toboggan accident when he was 5 years old, and showed us where he picked up pins at the bowling alley and Brockway and Westmount where he caddied and so on. And they got along really great. And Barry was an amazing guy. Guy that won, you know, the Emmy and won all this fame and so on. So about a week later, after Barry had his visit, he said, I think Warner Brothers would like to do a contract with Moe. I said, that'd be great. And I said, Barry, you know, are we talking money or whatever? So I had a lawyer that was doing some things for Moe, and we talked about it, and so Barry says, well, he says, we can offer you $15,000, $50,000 when the movie's finished and 4% of the profits. And I says, well, Barry, that's not very much money. I said, you know, it's going to cost Moe that much for a lawyer. To make a long story short, we did a contract. Moe got $50,000 up front, US. He gets $150,000 when the movie's made. He gets 4% of the profits, and they had to pay all the lawyers' fees. It was a very tough contract to do because we didn't want it to make Moe look like he was retarded. And it took a long time to do this contract with Warner Brothers. And they finally did the contract. Barry Morrow wrote the script of Moe's life. There's a lot of fiction in it. There's a girlfriend in it. It'll be interesting. It shows Moe basically picking up pins in the Strand bowling alley with an invite to the Masters in his back pocket. I know the one year you went with him, but I think one year he went down there, and all, you know, most of those guys were playing all winter. I think Moe come right out of the snow and only had like a week's practice to play in the Masters the second time, which really, you know, it was difficult for anybody to do, having to putt on those greens at Augusta and play, you know, and only have 1 week's practice, and you're picking up pins all winter in the bowling alley. So I asked Barry, I said, Barry, now you've been with Moe for a week and you know about autism, what would you, he said, yes, by all means. He said, Moe is autistic, and he said he can just function. And anyways, the movie will be made. Warner Brothers have canceled a lot of movies. The movie industry is not very good. When Moe passed away, I had Barry phone the family members, Moe's family, brothers and sisters, just to make sure they felt comfortable with the movie. And there were some concerns, and they talked about it, and there was, you know, maybe one script that had to be rewritten with Moe's family and so on. And so we think, to answer your question in a long, roundabout way, I definitely think he was autistic, yeah, but he could function. Because he would take the same route. He'd come to Glen Abbey, he wouldn't take the 401. I mean, he'd take Highway 7 or 8 to Guelph and then through Acton, and he'd go to Florida. He wouldn't take, you know, 95 or 75. He'd take the old route. And he would, in the morning, he'd wake up and he would do the same thing. He would take the road, he'd meet Nick, and then he would drive around, meet other golf pros, and at 4 o'clock he would show up at Foxwood. Every day you could almost set your watch. And and for him to remember, like you could ask him, you know, Moe, what is the yardage of the 10th hole at Calgary Country Club? And he would tell you, if he's played the golf course, or what is the yardage of the first hole at Shaughnessy, it's just amazing. So he had a lot of genius things that he could remember. It was amazing.
The only other thing that he was amazing about was his mathematics. He says, I didn't like any of those other subjects, but I love mathematics. And you could give him 3 numbers, top and bottom, and he'll give you the answer right away. Multiply, divide, whatever. He was a genius at mathematics.
You never wanted to play cards against him.
No.
Ever.
Yeah, he'd kill everybody with
Ever.
gin.
Cribbage, he was awesome. As of a month ago, I talked with Barry Morrow, and they finally have some financing in place. I don't know, I ran into some guy from Brantford the other day, and there was a write-up in the Brantford paper that Wayne Gretzky was involved, he and Janice. So I don't know whether they're putting money into it or what the deal is, but they are involved. And
I had also heard that the Gretzkys were putting money into that movie.
yeah. So it'll happen. It took 7 years for The Rain Man, from the time that Barry wrote the script. It was
And he
7
wrote-
years. And we're 5 years, I think, this past September with that contract. And we've renewed the option several times, where Moe, you know, now the money goes into his estate. But I know Barry Morrow was paid about $600,000 to do the script, so there's a big investment in that movie. And, you know, now you take it from there. But, you know, the reason why, when I kept making excuses for Barry to come up here, now when I see the whole picture and what Barry was getting at is, you know, how a person like Moe could function and be so good at golf and you know, have to, you know, live the way he lived. And, you know, it's really amazing. Like, if you were to follow him around in one day and you had a camera, I mean, it really is interesting how Moe, you know, survived and how he did things. It's just amazing.
I was going to ask Mr. Westlock, there's been articles recently by Mr. Nicholas and the president of the Augusta National, what I can't remember his last name, about some concern about the technology of a golf ball, far outweighing what it used to be. And I think the fellow at Augusta said that the Masters is considering a standardized golf ball. What would Mr. Norman think about that?
He never ever dwelled on that, but I know that Jack Nicklaus is the one that's been pushing it the most. And they're trying to get the ball cooled down, that it's not as hot as it is. And I don't know how that's going to be decided eventually, but pretty tough subject. Titleist man here would know more about it than I know.
Well, it's funny that it starts, you know, the comment when it comes up starts with the ball. The ball is one of many factors that lends itself to greater distance. Certainly, if you're going to talk about the ball, you need to talk about the club. That's number one. Number two, it's the physical conditioning of the players that's gotten so, you know, fantastically better over the past 10 years. You look at, you know, you stand beside Ernie Els or Vijay Singh nowadays compared to tour players of 20 years ago. There's a striking physical difference.
They're all working out.
Also, yeah, their physical training as well as the fitting aspect of it. And also an element that doesn't get a lot of publicity is course conditioning as it relates to distance. And I think that, you know, there's certainly, I don't think this is the forum to get into any debate on distance, but you know, there's certainly many factors inherent in that. But I think you do bring up a good question, and I was alluding to it before. I certainly wish daily that I was able to spend more time with Moe than I was able to, but with my love of the game and equipment, you know, I was always fascinated just to learn what he knew about equipment, what he cared about equipment, and why he chose the equipment he did.
Did he?
He wanted equipment to be consistent. And so to answer your question, what would his comment be about the distance? I don't know if he really would have had a comment about distance, but he was always concerned about consistency in anything he did.
And so that would have been his input into the whole technology and the development of the equipment. There was no.
I can't speak for Moe today, but
You know, Moe and I talked about what they should do to Augusta to make it tougher. So they don't. And he said, only one thing, leave the damn course alone and just narrow the fairways. Get the rough up to 4 inches. And he says, that's all they have to do. They shouldn't change the course. Well, there's 5 changes going on right now to the course. They're lengthening holes, they're putting trees up on number 11 on the right side. And I read about it recently in one of my golf magazines, that they are making some pretty significant changes in lengthening the golf course. And, but that's not the answer. These guys can knock it over 300 yards now. And
was he a long hitter? Irv? Active, but not.
No.
He was average. Just Knudsen was average too, George.
Neither one of them liked putting, you know. I played in a very interesting event in the Bahamas with Lauren Rubenstein, the head pro, and George. So we tee off on number 1, and George is down the middle, knocks the next one on the green about 5 feet from the hole, walks to the next tee. So we did that a couple more holes. I said, George, why don't you go on and knock those little putts in? He said, I don't like that part of the game. He played 18 holes, hit 18 greens, and not once did he go to the green to putt. Is that hating putting? Jesus, he hated putting. And Moe, for a long time, didn't care for it. But in his later years, he became very, very good, and he loved to get to the green to show you how good he could putt. And he was putting fabulous in the last year and a half. And he copied the Stan Utley method, which he is now teaching a lot of the pros. Bobby Locke was the greatest that I played with at Scarborough. I've studied him a long time. Bobby Locke, and when he stroked the putt, he'd open the door and close it. His stroke was like this. It was not straight back and straight through. So this Stan Utley, American pro who was teaching this method, has about 5 fellows right now using that. They call it the arc, and he has you can buy it. I've got one in my car, a plastic device about this long with an arc on it. And the idea is to put the heel of the putter up against the arc and just follow the arc if you want to learn how to do it. So the short game is the key to the game. You're going to win with the short game. I don't care how hard. But these guys are getting up now and they're killing it. They're just jumping out of their shoes almost, hitting it so hard and far. But they're getting into too damn much trouble. You know, they're playing out of the rough a lot. And they're strong and get it out of the rough. Tiger is a good example of how he can recover. But it's still, Moe was right. The answer, narrow the fairways and get the rough up.
You out of the rough now?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to make 3 comments and have any one of you gentlemen perhaps say a word or two about them. The first time I met Moe was in Kitchener at Rockaway back in the early 50s, and I was playing in that field day that was mentioned. And that particular day, Jerry Kesselring beat Moe by shooting a 29 on the backside.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a picture in my mind, vivid, of the first time I ever met Moe was under the stairs going up to the clubhouse because he wouldn't go up and get his prize, and he tried to sell it to me. It was a radio.
Yeah. Sure.
I can see it now as though it were yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
The second thing I want to comment on involves Nick, and Nick will remember this. Back in, I guess this would have been in the early 80s, when the RCGA, and I was handling some of that, we had a series of golf courses right across Canada that wanted Moe to come and do clinics. Now, Moe wouldn't fly.
No.
Nick knows that.
Didn't like it.
And we were all set we were going to do it, and unfortunately you were going to go with him, and at that time I believe your wife was not well, and we had to cancel it because you couldn't go.
That's true.
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that's true.
And how many disappointed letters and calls I got
sure.
about his not being able to do it.
Yeah.
And the other one was a comment that was made about Moe on the practice team. In my mind's eye, I can see Billy Casper saying, going up and down the line and saying to all the pros, put on your club. Moe's going to hit some
Yeah.
one iron.
True.
And there was nobody else hitting balls. They
Yeah.
all came down to watch him.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And all the spectators would gather around that same spot.
Absolutely.
They did that at Ancaster when they held it.
Unbelievable man.
He was there on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and
I'm sure
they'd
he
call
was.
him out.
In the streets, too,
And
sometimes.
I could always remember a big crowd on the practice range, all left there and come to watch Moe and applauded for quite a long time as to how good he was.
I was pretty young then, but I remember they would, and that you always had 2 or 3 feature foursomes, and you know, you had Moe and Kesselring, and Moe was a little younger then, and Nick, and they would have as many as 1,500 to 3,000 people tournament.
That's right.
And I could not believe the galleries that they would, you know, they would attract at that time, and you know, it was really a.
But you also had some Americans coming for it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Tom
They were-
Drake was.
I was going to say Tom Drake or Chuck
yeah.
Kosis.
Chuck Kosis,
Yeah.
yeah.
He
They
was
would
there.
come up, yeah.
They would come up for that. That was a prominent day, and it was a really quality field. Just the guys from Kitchener made it a quality field, you know, really.
That's true.
Yeah.
They had a field
Yeah.
right there at that club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of good players there.
Compare Hogan and Hogan, Moe Norman, and their personality being shy all the time. If you seen the Follow the Sun of Ben Hogan, how shy he was,
Yes.
and Moe Norman, like Hogan never fitted in anywhere. And how do you compare those two?
Mo had a
personality.
comfort zone with pros. I mean, these were his friends. He had a lot of really close friends that were golf pros. I mean, you know, he had Nick as an amateur, but it was just amazing when we had the visitation for the funeral, the number of club pros that come there to see Mo for the last time, and the little stories they had about Mo. And every one of them had a story, and I didn't realize how close Mo was to a lot of those golf pros. And it didn't matter, you know, where, even the guys in Quebec would phone me, and they all had a little story. When Mo would play in the Quebec Open, they become friends. But outside of that, I mean, he was really shy. I mean, he'd come to Foxwood, and if the clubhouse was full, I would see Mo circle. Okay, he wouldn't come in unless he saw either myself or one of my family. He just refused to come because he was so shy. And then when he would come in, he'd always want to sit on the end where there's a chair where he could exit, you know, if he didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Or if we were to go, even when we had the Hall of Fame dinner, if you notice, he was sitting on the end.
Yeah.
And he, you know, a couple times he left. You know, he was just so shy that way. And it's really too bad that, I don't know if somebody could have helped him back then. You know, he could have probably gone on to be great, but he said to me one day, you know, he's really been lucky that he was able to go to Florida, you know, for 47 years. He said, how many people could spend 47 years in Florida, you know? And so I think a lot of times he counted his blessings, you know, but he really was a shy person. I think this was part of his problem with relating to people. And he really meant well. He had a big heart, and I was just really taken back at that funeral. Like, we didn't know what to expect, you know. When I got into the church, and Sandy made a nice speech, and so did Audrey, and it was just, I can't explain it, you know. And the people that were there were just so pleased that so many people would come out and pay respect to Mo. Because, you know, a lot of people that didn't like Mo thought, well, you know, they're going to have a funeral, they're going to bury Moe, and that's going to be it. But it wasn't like that. And I remember going into that church, and I'd made arrangements to have the reception at Westmount, which a lot of people couldn't understand, but I said, no, we're going to do it. And I told them, well, we'll probably have 200 for sandwiches and whatever. I went into the church and I saw all these people. So I said to a boy that worked for me, I said, you better count the number of people in this church. He says, how do I count them? I says, well, you got to count the number of rows and then you multiply. So we're ready to go to the front of the church, and Paul was a pallbearer and so on. I was sitting just behind the pallbearers, and finally I went back. I said, how many people did you count? He said, 500. So I said to Robbie Strawn, who was a golf pro at Westmount, I said, you better go out and phone Westmount, tell them to make more sandwiches. But, you know, there was just so many people there that loved Moe. I mean, I knew he had a lot of friends, but I didn't know he had that many friends. He touched a lot of people in so many different ways. and you know, so many people in the United States. He probably had a bigger following in and around kind of Daytona Beach, New Smyrna, Orlando. He had a big following in the United States, probably bigger there than he did, you know, really in and around the Kitchener-Waterloo area, because we're so used to him that we never really thought that it was a big deal, you know.
Speaking of Moe's love for the golf professional, the club professional, as his visits over time to the office, to the Titleist office up in Newmarket, became, as his health unfortunately deteriorated, the visits became longer and longer. And Moe would come up and he'd like to see all the new equipment, and he'd like to meet the people and talk and putt around, but these visits kept getting longer and longer. And so one day in particular, he wasn't in a rush to go anywhere. And I invited Moe. I said, Moe, you know, I kind of had to get back to work. I said, Moe, would you like to come to my office? And he did. It was a very special memory for me. And Moe, he did that a couple of times. He came in and he would just sit and he would read his book. But he would listen to me. I'd talk to a lot of golf professionals during my day, and he would listen to me. And after every conversation, as soon as I hung up the phone, he'd have to comment. And I can't repeat some of his comments, unfortunately. But he knew every golf professional in Ontario, and he had a comment about their golf course, about their professional staff, about the golf pro, and he was certainly vocal about them. So it was a very special memory.
I got a little story about his shyness. I'm playing in the Canadian Amateur Championship in Calgary Country Club. And Moe has tied for the lead, and I can't think of the name of the pro from Vancouver, but anyway.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we go to the first hole, and they tie. Second hole, they tie. Third hole, Moe birdies and wins it. So now comes the presentation of prizes. And Charlie Watson was the president at that time. He says, where the hell is Moe? I got to present him with this trophy. I says, I'll try and find him. Where was he? He was shy. He was down by the river, just sitting there watching the water going by. I says, Moe, you got to come up there and get your prize. You just got to put in an appearance. You don't have to say anything. I finally influenced him to come up, and I got a picture of the actual presentation in one of my albums. And it was nothing but shyness. He just didn't want to. This was very evident that he just didn't want to make any speeches or anything.
He really got pretty good at making speeches. If you cut him off
very
short.
good.
If you wouldn't let him ramble, he'd be okay. But George Clifton had a lot to do with that. You know, George really worked with him, and finally got Moe to at least, you know, say thank you. And then Moe was really good at it at the end. But he would ramble on for 10 minutes if you'd let him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just like to say that I got to know Moe when I was playing on the Canadian Tour, and it was a privilege to get to know him. In our lifetime, we get very few opportunities to meet a legend, much less get to know them. And Moe was a legend in every respect. And I remember the very first time I ever saw him put on a clinic was at Prince Edward Island, and George Clifton was the announcer. encourage Moe to hit different shots. And he went through the bag, and he got to the 3-wood. And, I mean, it was just, anybody that's ever seen Moe do a clinic, it's just incredible to watch. He had a flight that was all his own. There was nobody that I've ever seen hit a ball that floated the way his did. But anyway, he got to the 3-wood, and George Clifton said, Moe, how about a high draw? So he hit this high draw, and he says, how about a high fade? Hit the high fade. He says, how about a low draw? He said, hit the low draw, and the caddies one-hopping every one of these balls with the 3-wood. And he says, hit the low fade. And Moe said, can't do it, George. And he said, well, you can hit any shot. And he said, oh, I can't do it. He said, well, how come? He says, there was a tee marker that was about 6 inches square, a little block that was about 10 yards down the tee. He was doing this on the first tee. And he says, I'll hit the tee. He says, Moe, that's pretty small. Why don't you give it a try? And he says, okay, George. Boom, he hit the tee, and it came back into the gallery. So unbelievable. But he was truly a legend in every respect.
Yeah.
In 1978, I got into the golf business, and I called on a lot of the pros that I'd caddied for, trying to get their Canadian PGA card. And we knew nothing about the business, and I had to set up the budget for the golf course, and I asked some of the pros their information, and a fellow named Wilson brought Moe with him, and Moe said to me, do something for the kids, because they're the future of this game. And that's all he said.
Yeah. He was very strong on that. I'd be sitting with him having breakfast at one of the clubs around Burlington, and the fellow would come up, oh, I admired your game, some older gentleman that was getting ready to tee off, and he says, I really have a great respect for you and your great ability and your record. Would you mind signing this scorecard? He says, no, I won't sign. You got your kids here? You got your son or your daughter here? I'll sign for them. So it was embarrassing to me to sit there and have him reject it. So what I'd do is I'd get up before my breakfast was over, and I got it pretty quick. And as the guy was going out the pro shop door, I said, give me the card. I'd take the card, and I'd come back around the other way. And I says, Moe, I got a special friend. Would you sign this card? And he'd sign it. And I'd take it around and give it to the guy. That's the way he was. He was he loved kids. And the kids loved him. We'd go shopping over in Niagara Falls, New York at Lewiston, and we'd do that about every 3 weeks. He loved the big buffet spot that we had there. All he could eat. And never did he ever go anywhere without a couple of balls in his pocket. Well, we'd get into Top's grocery store there, and here comes a mother with a kid either in a carriage or walking. And Moe immediately pulled the ball out and started to bounce it. He'd get the kids' attention, and they would gravitate to Moe. They just loved it, and he just loved. And by the time he was through bouncing, he'd give the ball to the kid. But he loved kids. He really did.
Well, gentlemen, I've been asked to say thank you, and that's certainly a very easy thing for me to do. This has been a great afternoon, and we're all very much indebted to each and every one of you for taking time and being here, and reminiscing is good for the soul. So it's nice to have you here, and thank you. And the young lady will pass out the Cracker Jack.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Thank you very much.